Hello, everyone. It has been a long time since I have created my newsletter. Let's just put it to life. I'm going to change this a little bit so that it's just Krishna here. Um, yeah, there's been a lot happening. April and May were really busy for me, and also fairly emotional. And so I decided that it was not a good time for me to be recording a video. Although this is all about interpersonal relationships, right? This is all about at least what I'm hoping to give you in terms of information is how our physiology and our environment all contribute to how we are presenting ourselves in the world and how we can change that. The whole point of Dr. Dispenza's book is about how you change yourself into a person who is different from the current person. So you by changing your personality, he loves to say changing your personality changes your personal reality, right? And so today in the last newsletter we talked about how those who Dr. Hardy and Dan Sullivan, who've written the 10x is easier than 2x book, talk about how your goal has to be so big when you're 10xing your business or your life. Your goal has to be so big that it almost seems impossible. And then we talked about how Dr. Dispenza talks about mental rehearsal, and that there is so much evidence that when you mentally rehearse where you want to be, right? So he talked about the two experiments where people imagined lifting weights and also imagined playing the piano, and both of their brains changed just by them visualizing it, right? So we are really powerful in what we can do. So what I promised in the last newsletter was that I will take you into a little bit more depth about how the structure of our brain and how our body interacts with the brain all tie together. And as we understand more and more about the structure of the brain and how it interacts and how it plays a role in our interpersonal relationships, I think it becomes much clearer about these ideas of how to change ourselves and what it is that is in our neural pathways that may be stopping us. It becomes much easier to comprehend that, and to maybe even once we understand, then it is much easier to put things into practice, right? If it's all kind of peripheral knowledge, or even if it's all just head knowledge, it becomes a little bit more difficult. So I am I'll be reading a little bit and talking, looking into my notes and coming back here. But what we are going to do today is we are going to dip a little bit into the brain. Dr. Siegel talked about the hand model of the brain, how this is the brain stem, this is the limbic area, and this part here is the prefrontal cortex. And so we're going to dive a little bit into what he talks about. So he starts off by talking about, I'm trying to figure out where to start off with, right? So we're going back to the hand model. The center of the palm is the brain stem, this is the limbic area, and this is the cortex. The brain stem is the oldest part. That's called the reptilian brain, and it is the first to develop as we develop in the womb. It is essential for regulating physiology, respiration, heartbeat, states of alertness. Are you sleepy or are you alert? Fight, flight, freeze, right? It all it, it starts from the brainstem. It's also involved in creating a sense of safety. It is what is involved in how our facial muscles react when we are not in fight, flight, fright, freeze mode. Our our facial muscles are more relaxed. Our ears are more open. I found that fascinating. That that there's actual scientific information about how when we are not defensive, we are much more able to listen, to hear. We are not frightened, so we are able to hear. Um, so we are open when we are not in fight, flight, freeze mode, which all comes from this brainstem, right? We are much more open to interpersonal relationships. We are able to hear better. We notice other people's facial expressions. We are able to react. And as long as we are grounded and integrated in our body, it is possible for us to actually communicate and empathize with the other person. Um, so we talked about the brainstem. So let's talk about the limbic region. Okay, so the limbic region has the left and right amygdala, it has the hippocampus and the hypothalamus. This is the area that has been studied a lot. We've all heard about the hippocampus and the hypothalamus, and how the cortisol is secreted, and how all of these parts of the brain, the limbic area of the brain, is what sets things up. So the one of the first domains that is in with the limbic area is it has 5 dimensions. Okay, so the first is emotional states: sadness, anger, fear, joy, disgust, shame. But as Dr. Siegel points out, emotion is much more than these categories, right? There is a physical reaction to all of these emotions. There are subtle shifts. It works with the brain stem and body to generate feelings. So this subcortical stuff, so everything that is below these fingers, right? The limbic area and the brain stem work together to works with the brain stem and the body to generate feelings. So all of the subcortical stuff creates emotion, bodily sensations, affect, and feelings. The second dimension that it works on is motivational. If the area from which we generate motivation is the limbic area. The third is it helps to shape memory. So we've talked a lot about in the earlier editions about the implicit memory and explicit memory, and how important it is. When you're traumatized, the implicit memory does not get processed, and how one of the things we need to do when we work with trauma is to bring both the left and right side of the brain together to resolve and understand that implicit memory, and to really feel it and be able to experience it and put a timestamp on it and create a narrative about it. That is really important to do with traumatic memories. And there are multiple ways in which to do it. If you do EFT, we have several specific techniques that we use in order to work with trauma. and they're called gentle techniques. And it is possible, very possible, to work with a person at their own pace to resolve these traumatic issues and bring them from being implicit triggering memories to an integrated memory that is no longer threatening to the individual. It's deep work, but it's very, very possible. The fourth area is the limbic area is involved in appraisal of meaning. Is this an important thing? Do I need to pay attention to this, or is it something that I can ignore? And the fifth area, which is specific to mammals, is how we create attachment. We've talked about all of the different types of attachment, and so this is how the brainstem and the limbic area together are involved in how we develop attachments and the entire theory of attachment. Then we have the neocortex. We have several lobes. We have the back area and the front area. The back is involved with complex functions such as seeing, hearing. The frontal area is associated with motor functions and thinking. The prefrontal cortex, the middle part and the side part, which are called dorsolateral parts, are linked to awareness. Example, think of the right foot. When you say think of the right foot, that connects the right side, connects the side of the prefrontal to the somatosensory strip. So there's a lot that I can go into here, but just understand that awareness, like the physical sensation of being where you are and in a space, comes from this prefrontal cortex. And if you want to know, it's the middle, when we do this, it's the middle two fingernails, the middle prefrontal cortex, that is just behind our forehead, and then these are the sides. Okay, so what does this do? What does the prefrontal cortex do? And none of this is isolated, right? All of this is, it's not like the brainstem regulates respiration and heartbeat and says, okay, this is all I'm doing. I'm not. They're all working together. The prefrontal cortex, or the neocortex, the cortex, let's just talk about the cortex. It regulates the body. It's the ultimate arbiter of physiology and the balancing of the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems. So the accelerator and the brake. It mediates attuned communication. So how we perceive, how we resonate, how we respond involves the cortex. Emotional balance, the capacity to regulate. So the limbic area, inhibitory fibers come down from the medial prefrontal cortex down into the limbic area, and it actually splashes it with the hippocampus with a solution of hormones and protein stuff. I don't remember everything, but when there is a severe trauma, that doesn't happen. That flowing of that dampening of the hippocampus arousal does not happen, and that is when that memory remains an implicit memory and is not integrated. So we said the cortex regulates the body. It is the ultimate arbiter of physiology. It mediates attuned communication. It mediates emotional balance, regulating the subcortical areas and what they bring up. Response flexibility, choosing the most appropriate response. So you probably heard of people talking about, their executive function is not developed enough, and part of that is when people do not have flexibility of response, of not knowing when to say what, and having the right, in quote, right responses based on the situation. That is partly because their cortex is not, the neocortex is not fully functioning, which might be because of the situation. Maybe they're frightened, or they're angry, or they're out of control, so they're not regulated. But in other situations, they might be. And then we know that there are, in children on the spectrum, people on the spectrum, one of the manifestations of that is lack of response flexibility. Insight, connecting the past with the present and future. Mental time travel, how the past and the future connect to the present, and how and becoming aware, sort of self-knowing awareness comes from this cortex. That's partly one of the reasons why we talk about how the human brain makes us different. I makes us different from other animals, because this ability to become self-aware and to be aware of your own presence is, I think, a uniquely human condition or quality. Empathy, creating an image of another person's mind in our mind. Combining 5 and 6, Dr. Siegel calls mindsight. So what is that? Insight and empathy, combining the two in order to be able to actually look and read another person's mind, which is possible when we practice things like meditation, mindful awareness, learning to be in the present moment, and just being fully present for that other person. It is possible for us to read that person's mind and give them space. Yeah, this is what I was saying. This is what he says: when we unlearn fear, what happens is that when we are in fear, these fibers that come down from the cortex into the amygdala does not are stopped. But when we unlearn the fear, there are these fibers that come from the cortex into the amygdala, and they squirt GABA into the amygdala, right? And you can look up the full, what the acronym GABA stands for. I think we all are aware of it, especially if you've read anything about how drinking alcohol affects GABA secretion. And so when you're trying to get over alcohol addiction, one of the supplements that you're advised to take is a GABA supplement, because it helps you to monitor and moderate the effects of withdrawal. We also use the neocortex to access intuition, to bring the wisdom of the body into the brain. And our sense of morality, how we imagine what is for the larger global good, is also a result of the neocortex. All the seven of these functions, right? We talk about um, all of these functions is what promotes secure attachment. So if you don't have emotional balance, or if you don't have response flexibility, if your body is unregulated because of fear and being feeling not safe, all of that prevents you from developing secure attachment. When you understand all of this, and when you're able to be in your body and listen to your body, and allow this communication between the body and the brain and the skull to to become alive, to become a live thing, that changes the way we present ourselves in the world. One of the fascinating things I wanted to talk about today was Dr. Siegel talks about nine areas of integration. And the first one he talks about is integration of consciousness. And I think this is um, the widest way to look at it, right? How are we integrating the consciousness, our consciousness, and the consciousness of other people? What do we mean when we say that we all come from the same source? Or there are so many ways in which to talk about integration of consciousness. It is and the fascinating thing that I understood by going back over and over what he was saying is that one of the things to realize is that the cortex, although it's when you look at the brain, it seems like all folded, and it feels as if there's so much there. He talks about how it actually just has 6 layers. It's like 6 business cards stacked one on top of the other. So when we want, this is very much tied into what Dr. Dispenza says. So I hope you are paying attention to this. So we talked about how we have the brainstem, we have the limbic system, and we have the neocortex, right? The neocortex is the most recent addition, evolution of the brain. And we talked about how it regulates the body, but it is also very much involved in response flexibility, in emotional regulation, generally in executive function. So now if we think about, we've also talked a lot about explicit memory, implicit memory, and all of that. One of the things that the upper layers of the cortex, the first 2 layers of the cortex, are the places where we have pre-formed memories, we have pre-formed opinions, we have our experiences that we've already had reside in those first 2 layers. When we are experiencing something new, like he gives an example of a dog running towards us. So suppose you're a little child and you've never seen a dog before, right? You are experiencing this vision of the dog from the body up. You see it. There is wonder. You see this furry thing. You begin to make associations with it, and it's going. You're seeing it, and it's going up to the brain. If you're a person who has, worked with dogs all your life, and you're an adult and you've seen plenty of dogs and you have certain opinions about dogs, you may like them, you may not like them. Those are all in your first two layers. So when this dog is coming towards you, although there is a new experience of a new dog coming towards you, and that goes up from the layers 6 and 5 to layers 3 and 4, the past experience with dogs comes crashing down from the first two layers and suffocates this new experience that you're having. As a result of that, if you are not actively practicing being in the present moment, your past dictates how you react to this dog. It's the same thing when you're talking about interpersonal relationships. Your past dictates the first two layers, and all of those stored experiences are so powerful that they overcome your ability to be in the present and just experience this particular event or this particular person in a completely new way. I find that absolutely fascinating, because what are we doing when we do the meditations that Dr. Dispenza talks to us about? When we say that we want to become somebody new, we are trying to disconnect. Dr. Dispenza talks about don't allow the past to predict your future. And what Dr. Siegel is saying is that because of everything that is stored in these first two layers and all your preconceived ideas about how something will turn out, those preconceived ideas have the power to completely suffocate anything new that is coming up through your body wisdom and your intuition. And therefore, it is really important to learn to disconnect that, to put the past away in a box and to be fully present here and now as a completely new experience, in order to do all of this that we want to do, in order to break the habit of being yourself, in order to 10x your business and become this new person who can have a 10x business. Once we understand that there is a certain level of imprisonment that we suffer from if we don't learn how to use these techniques, such as meditation, mindfulness meditation, mindful awareness, and techniques such as EFT that can help us redo these neural circuits. And so when we learn to do that, we learn to be fully in the present. And when we learn to be fully in the present, then we can experience life in a whole new way. We don't have to submit to those old beliefs that we have, and we can step into being a new person. I hope that is helpful. I found it extremely not just fascinating, but really hopeful, because I love how this ties in with both those other books. And this is the last chapter in this book of Neurophysiology of We, and he talks about how, because of these functions of the cortex and the neocortex and the prefrontal cortex, we are able then to the ways of integration that we want to be aware of is vertical integration. So knowing how to access the information from your body and combine it with the information that is coming from top down, and not let one dominate over the other. There's horizontal integration, that is the left and right, which is what is involved when we are talking about creating narratives using both implicit and explicit memories. and there's narrative integration. So when you're doing, that's when you begin to build these connections, that is how you get a cohesive narrative of your life. um, and then there is interpersonal integration, there is state integration, and there is what I love, which is transpirational integration. He talks about, which is understanding and actually experiencing the truth that we are all one, that there is an actual unity across all of us that we can access when we use techniques like meditation. So I hope that is helpful. There will be a summary of this in the newsletter. I will also link to a meditation that I have, which I might have sent you before, but I would really love for you to be able to step into this new place of abundance using that meditation. So thank you again. Thank you for bearing with me for being tardy on this edition. I will see you soon. Thank you. Take care.